If there is one aspect of Rocket League that is more common than any other, it is challenges on the ball. There are obviously many times throughout a game where you are simply not going to have a free touch on the ball, which means you need to be able to determine what balls you should be challenging and which ones you shouldn't. So in today's video, we'll be breaking down how you can know when you should be challenging the ball in Rocket League. And real quick, before we do get started, if you guys are interested in having one of your own replays analyzed, make sure you check out my Discord, which is linked down in the description, as I do offer free coaching through there. When it comes to putting in challenges in Rocket League, there are two very important things that we need to consider. Number one, we need to be aware of all the other players' positioning in relation to the ball. The other player's positioning tells us exactly how we need to approach the ball to give us the best chance to have a successful challenge. The second thing that we need to be concerned about is the speed at which we're able to approach the ball. You see, when you decide that you want to put in a challenge, it is a very bad idea to do so hesitantly. When you decide that you're going to go for the ball, you just need to actually commit to it, because otherwise you're just going to end up getting beat anyway. So let's look at some examples of when you should and should not be going for challenges throughout a game. So right here, we're going to be looking as this ball rolls up the back wall of our opponents, and you can see we're just being very patient here in the midfield, which admittedly isn't the worst thing, but there is such a thing as being just overly cautious, therefore allowing our opponents a free breakout as we see there. So let's just kind of talk through this and look at all the opportunities where we could possibly put in a challenge to continue to apply offensive pressure here. So this ball goes ahead, rolls up the back wall. As of right now, if we're looking at the other players, it is very likely that someone here on the orange team is able to get a touch on this ball. So this patience initially is perfectly fine. As this rolls forward just a little bit further though, we can see that Paradox goes off the wall here and just completely misses. So as we're looking at the positioning of the cars right now, we can see Boogeyman facing back into the net, can't go. Paradox facing into the corner, can't go. Snipe facing into the corner, can't go. This opponent coming back, possibly that he can swing in on this, but at the look that we're seeing here, this would be our green light to apply this pressure should we want to maintain possession of this ball as cleanly as possible. So right here, what would be good is just driving forward and trying to bang this ball directly back off the backboard, back out into the midfield for a teammate to possibly run onto as Snipe here rotates out. Another option as well is you can kind of just get a pinch over to the other corner, where again, the teammate should be able to swoop in while this guy tries to figure out how to play that ball successfully. The one thing we don't really want to do is just leave the ball sitting here, because we do kind of get bailed out by the fact that Snipe does turn quite aggressively. But if Snipe makes the assumption that a teammate's going to come in and leaves, now we're just giving up all this space for free to our opponents, and it's going to allow them to transition out of defense a whole heck of a lot more easily than they really should be allowed to. So that's number one right here, just way too much time given to them, and you can see Snipe is almost caught off guard by the fact that he's actually able to turn without having another teammate jumping in on him. So, you know, all well and good then, that's fine. As this ball pops out, we check back behind us to see if our teammate is going, which isn't the worst idea, just to see if we're gonna have a teammate coming forward. But at the time that we see this, we need to be ready to turn ball cam back on and immediately go pressure this ball, just so again, they don't have a completely free clear. Because as we see here, we recognize, all right, teammate's not going, but we take so long to actually realize that by the time we figure out that they're not going, we're already facing all the way back towards our corner without any idea as to what's going on in the play, because we've kept ball cam off the entire time. In this situation, we need to quickly flick it off, see where he is, recognize that he's too far away to make a play, realize what that means, and it means that we need to turn and apply pressure. Not that we necessarily need a full dive, but at least deny some space from our opponents so that they don't feel like they can just take control of this ball. So as we then turn ball cam back on, you can see if we had made all of these decisions just a little bit faster, it's very possible that we would be able to nip in and possibly get some kind of challenge here, or at the very least put a lot of pressure on these two players here to get a clear out without a whole lot of time to play the ball exactly as they want to. But instead, we are just a little too patient, and that then allows a completely free clear for our opponents, allowing them to break out of defense when they really shouldn't have been allowed to do so. Moment number two here is again gonna be all about recognizing what is happening as quickly as possible. So we're going to be awkwardly backing up back out into the midfield here. The ball comes out towards us, and you can see again, we're just super hesitant about whether or not we should actually go for that ball, and it leads to us just getting clean beat. So let's just break this down just a little bit, because we're moving up into the midfield. We're in a fairly fine spot right now. I argue we could be a little bit further back just because we have two teammates pretty much in the exact same spot. So there's no real guarantee that this thing's going to get in front of the net. And even if it does, there's another opponent coming back right there. So very unlikely that we're able to do anything, even if this ball does drop mid. So because we already have two teammates in front of us, being just a little bit further back wouldn't be too terrible. So let's just imagine we were here instead. And this would allow us to be in a spot where we already have where we're going to need to be covered, as opposed to being pushed up a little bit further and now needing to readjust ourselves. So this would have solved this initial issue, but since we do find ourselves here, we have to realize, okay, there's nothing we can really do on this ball right now. The big thing is we want to make sure we're maintaining our forward momentum so that when that ball does pop out, we're again able to attack it quickly. Because when the opportunity presents itself, we again just need to be able to go fast so we don't allow opponents time to get to the ball first. So right here, rather than just awkwardly backing up and then having to restart our forward momentum, I would encourage just a small turnaround. Because as of right now, like, there's no way this ball is coming mid anytime soon. So us turning our back to the ball for a brief second is not going to make a difference, because the ball is just simply not going to be popping out to us anytime soon. So if we had just swung around this way and had just done a full circle to face back out from the midfield, basically exactly where we're going to end up, we would then be able to maintain forward momentum to attack the ball when it pops out to us. But instead, we're going to have this backwards momentum, meaning that as Saucy makes this touch, now if we want to actually go for the ball, we need to restart our forward momentum, therefore utilizing a ton of boost to get back up to speed, all while trying to beat these opponents to this ball as last man back. This is why having that forward momentum is so important, because if we were already moving forward here, we would already be moving closer to the ball, and we'd have this win fairly easily. So really consider how you're moving around the field at all times. Try to maintain that forward momentum so you give yourself the best chance to be able to attack the ball quickly. So in this position, yes, it's quite awkward, but as this ball comes out, the one very important thing we need to recognize is that it is getting closer to us and farther away from these opponents. And when you have a situation like that, that is generally your green light to be willing to put in that challenge. Even as last man back here, we have to realize that putting in this challenge is probably still our best bet to buy enough time for our team to get back. Because if we either do what we do here and just sit still, we're just opening up the door for our opponents to come in and just hit the ball over the top of us directly into an open net. And if we also decide to just go back instead right away, now we're opening up all this space where they would then be able to take control of the ball, and we'd be faced with a 2v1 coming at us while we're trying to buy time for our teammates to recover. So in this situation, just recognize, hey, ball coming towards us, let's take advantage of it getting closer to attack it quickly and just take as solid a 50 as you can with these guys to try to give your team the best chance to recover that you can. For this next clip, we're going to be discussing the importance of figuring out where you are in your defensive rotation, whether you are first, second, or third man, and what your responsibility is in that position when it comes to challenging the ball. So you can see here, we're just being very, very awkward on the defensive end. We somehow, luckily, do not get scored on, which I personally believe is an absolute miracle. But let's look at the main issue that happens here. So we're kind of caught rotating back in an awkward position. Snipe is going to cut off the ball initially and just make things kind of awkward in the midfield, which does buy us a bit of time, which is all well and good. And you can see we're kind of again playing that patient game, which is fine to see where this ball is going. But as soon as this ball starts to work its way across the field like this, we have to recognize, all right, we are currently the closest one to this ball who can actually swing out to get a touch. Because obviously our teammate over here is going to be working his way back, so not really feasible for him to cut across to it. And our other teammate is behind us. So in this situation, our main goal should be to push on forward here and cut off any possible angle to the net that we can. Because the real danger in this play is the opponent getting on the far side of this ball and cutting it back towards the net if both ourselves and our teammate are just sitting back and waiting patiently. That's the danger we need to avoid, so we need to deny that space to eliminate any possibility of that control from our opponents. So as this ball comes across, this is the moment that we should be pushing forward into this general area to cut off the possible cut from this opponent. That way, if he does go for the cut and it does get around us, our teammate is still back behind us to hopefully get the save. But we definitely don't want to, again, be sitting back like this where we give up a bunch of space to this guy. And not only that, but we make our entire team awkward, because as first man here, if you don't go, it can become quite awkward for the second man to then try to push into the spot that you should be occupying, simply because they have more space to cover than you did. So the second that you decide not to go quickly in these kinds of situations, you can often cause a bit of a traffic jam with the rest of your defensive rotation, as we're going to see as this play moves forward. So you can see that we just decide randomly not to go. And then as we all of a sudden back up, not only do we almost run into our teammate, which would completely ruin this play altogether, but we also are giving up all of this space for this opponent to cut this ball back towards the net. So we do give up an opportunity where this ball could be in the net right here as it comes along the sidewall, because we're just in a very awkward spot. And you can see because of this awkwardness, we just have all three of our defensive players at this near post. And this net is very, very open. We'll probably get away with this in the ranks like Plat and Low Diamond and below. But as you get up into Champ, and especially up into GC, if your defense finds yourself in this kind of position, you are going to get scored on almost every single time. Which is why it is very important to make those decisions on challenges quickly, so that you can avoid causing a traffic jam with the rest of your defensive rotation. Because now that we're all kind of here, we're all of a sudden all going to decide that we need to go try to jump for this. So now not only were we all in the same spot, but because we were all in the same spot, now we're triple committing, which is just the worst thing you can do on the defensive side of the ball, because this very well should have been an open net. We're just very lucky that Ricky comes back down and lands on this ball. That is the only thing that saves this from being a goal, but that all comes down to the fact that we played way too patiently out the gate when the ball was clearly ours to go for. So you just need to make sure that you're recognizing when you are first man up on a play, and being sure that you're willing to be a bit more aggressive in those situations. As first man, especially in threes, you have the green light to be a bit more aggressive with your challenges, because you have not one, but two teammates hopefully behind you. Obviously, in this case, we only had the one, but we definitely don't want to be putting our team in a situation where we give up a lot of space to the opponents, therefore putting all three of our defenders in very awkward spots. For our last example here, we're going to be looking at a quick moment where you absolutely should not be challenging the ball, followed by a moment where we absolutely should. So you can see this ball pops out, and yeah, we're getting a bit jumpy with our teammate there, and now we're immediately going to go back to playing super duper patient, which, you know, works in this case, but let's talk about this, because this could get potentially quite dangerous. So the issues are going to start here pretty much right out the gate with this rotation, and it's all about speed here. When it comes to challenges in Rocket League, it's important that we manage our speed around the field correctly, so that we're able to attack the ball on our challenges quickly. So you can see right here, we're just kind of meandering our way back, which on one hand is somewhat fine, because we do have a defender back here ready to make this touch out to the corner or somewhere. But we have to realize that currently this guy has no support back behind him. So if he makes any kind of rough touch, if it just bounces off the sidewall back into the mid, if he accidentally taps it directly out into the midfield, there's currently no defender back here. So being in this spot as the first man coming back on rotation, we do want to make sure that we're getting into a supported position somewhat quickly, so that we can play off of this guy's touch effectively. You can see this touch does indeed go out into the midfield, and now we're just in a super awkward spot, where again, if this offense from the orange team was a bit better, there very easily could have been a player sitting right here waiting to take this shot, and because we're facing into the net, it would have been a very difficult save for us to make, just because of how awkward a position we're in. So really consider where the ball could be going, and make sure you position to be able to play off as many options as possible. But that's not the main issue here. So we have that whole rotation thing where we just want to get to the spot just a little bit faster, so that we're in a good position to be able to make a save if we need to, or just generally challenge the ball. But then as this ball comes across, this is pretty similar to the last example we talked about, where we were like, oh, we're closer to the ball, so we should go. The problem is, in this situation, we are still further behind our teammates. So even though the ball is moving towards us this way, we are currently behind where our teammate is. And as we can see, our teammate is currently utilizing boost. So the thing we have to realize in these situations is we can see our teammate. They cannot see us from where they are. They're staring directly at the ball. They're not looking from where we are. So we need to notice that, okay, teammates using boost and heading this way. I'm not going to try to jump in on this play because there's really no threat from anyone on the orange team to be able to shoot this ball as it rolls across in this direction. So I don't need to worry about this. So with that in mind, let teammate come across and we can just move up into the midfield to be able to push on forward as teammate gets this clear out. So we definitely don't want to be jumping in when our teammate's going for the ball. And as we start to boost forward, you can see very clearly that Ricky is staying on this ball. So we had ample opportunity to pull off of this rather than just committing all the way forward in where the ball is. And now we make things very awkward for our team because we're now bumping our teammate. The pass might not have been as good as it could have been. It's just a whole mess, and that's just a lack of awareness as to where our teammate is and what they're planning on doing. And I think because we just double committed with our teammate and bumped him, that we're now going to go back immediately to being super cautious about what we're willing to go for. Because now when this ball pops out and we are currently in the position with forward momentum to go on forward to pressure this ball, we are instead going to decide that we don't want to risk double committing with this guy, even though in this situation he's facing backwards and we have the better angle to go play this. So this again just goes back to paying attention to the position of the other players. So because you see your teammate coming back facing like this, that's your green light to push on forward. Do not allow them to get any semblance of control on this ball. And looking at this from your teammate's perspective, because you get so close to this play, it's going to make things quite awkward because now he might, at least for a second, think that you're going to be going for this, and it might cause him to hesitate a bit more than he'd like to as well, therefore giving them more time to organize. Obviously, in this case, all three of them are right here, so it's not going to end up being overly bad because they're not organizing themselves overly well. But the danger in being overly cautious like this from this far away from the ball is that at a higher level, they will just control this, and now you're giving up a bunch of space trying to play retreating defense against a full team carrying the ball in the air for the possible 0-second winner. So make sure you just really look for those opportunities when you see your teammate facing away from the ball to just go ahead and apply that pressure and at least try to force them to do something. You don't necessarily need a full dive at the ball, but even a drive challenge is better in this kind of position than just having both you and your teammate wait back to see what the opponents do, because the more often you do things like this, the more times you're going to get burned by giving your opponents free control. So to wrap this up, when it comes to challenges, you just need to be aware of the position the other players are in. Their positioning is going to tell you when you do and do not have the green light to challenge the ball. When there's no one else on the field that is able to make a play on the ball, that's a green light. When you are first man up in your rotation and you have support behind you, that's your green light. When the ball is moving towards you and away from your opponents, that's your green light. But when you're watching your teammate move towards the ball as well, or if you see you're actively beat by an opponent, that is when you want to be a bit more cautious with moving up for that ball when you see that someone else is going to have a touch on it before you. Of course, thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate each and every one of you who made it to this point in the video, and I do hope you enjoyed it and found it helpful. If you did, make sure you click that subscribe button right down below so you make sure you don't miss any future Rocket League content. Additionally, if you'd like to be a bit more involved in the community we're building here, feel free to join my Discord, which I'll have linked down in the description. And as always, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you next time. See you later, guys.